All right, what's up, everybody? JesseMorrell here, and I wanted to talk to you about this issue of capitalism versus socialism, because I think a lot of this younger generation is being led astray and are confused by these issues. I started writing a book called Socialist Propaganda and the Injustice That Never Was. And I just thought I might share some of the content from that book, in this quick little video, give you a little overview of how socialism works, how socialist revolution takes root in a society, and how they really thrive on supposed injustices that really aren't injustices. And that's kind of the whole point of my book, is that this is socialist or communist propaganda. So if you look at the history of socialism, it really started during the Industrial Revolution. Like you have the Russians that were working in these factories, and the propaganda of socialism is that the capitalist is exploiting the labor class. That here you have a capitalist who owns the means of production. That's what capital is. And he owns the factory, he owns the machines, and he's buying the labor from the labor class, and he's exploiting their labor, paying them low wages while he's reaping huge profits. And since they're the ones doing the work, they're the ones that should be reaping in the profits. And so socialism says that there's wealth that needs to be redistributed from the capitalist who owns the factories and the machines, and that profit needs to be redistributed down to the labor class who's actually producing the value. They're actually the ones producing the wealth. And so that's what led to the communist revolution in Russia, was this idea that the capitalists are exploiting the labor class. The labor class is entitled to more money than what they're currently getting. And so they had a revolution. They took control of the capital. They took control of the means of production. You see, you still have capital in socialism. The question is, who's in charge of it? And of course, the government in socialism is in charge of the capital. The problem in Russia and in China and everywhere that they tried this socialist communist experiment is that it is profit that drives the capitalists to, be innovative and to be creative and to bring products and new products to the marketplace. That's why you have so much innovation in the United States, because we're a capitalist society, or primarily, and we have a free marketplace where you can start any business that you want. You can bring new products to the market and reap the rewards of your labor, and that's what drives innovation. But in Russia and in China, when they took control of the means of production, took control of these factories, now everyone gets an equal share of the wealth. Everyone gets a minimum wage, a livable minimum wage, whether you work hard or not, whether you work fast or slow. And so why should you work hard and fast if you're going to get paid just as much as the guy who works miserably and slow? So what you had in Russia and in China was a lot of lack of supply. They couldn't actually feed all their people. They couldn't meet the demands, and that's because you didn't have the driving force behind the economy, which is profit. So this injustice that never really was is the idea that the capitalist is exploiting the labor class. That's just not true. The only thing that you're entitled to is the wage that you agree to work for. So if you're working in a factory, and that was my first job, I dropped out of high school when I was 16. I did night school to finish, but I started working in a factory, full time when I was 16. And the only wage that I was entitled to was the wage that I agreed to work for. Now, was the owner making a lot more money than me? Sure, he was, but he was bringing a lot more to the marketplace than I was. What you have to understand is that when you're a laborer, you are selling your labor. And if you want $15 an hour, then you need to produce $15 worth of labor. And really, if you're working for a company, then you need to be producing $25 worth or $30 worth or more of labor if you want them to give you a higher pay. And so, minimum wage means minimal skills. So I realized I needed to, improve my knowledge, improve my skills, and contribute more to the marketplace. That's the way to increase your wage, not by socialist revolution, not by picketing and unionizing, which is really, the unions have the exact same mentality as the socialists, the idea that the company is exploiting their labor, that they're entitled to more of the wealth, and that it needs to be redistributed down to them. And so they create a union, which is really no different than a monopoly or a cartel. If the oil industry companies formed a cartel and decided to fix the price of gasoline, that would be illegal. If they said, look, no one's going to sell a gallon of gas less than $10 a gallon, and we're all going to be in on it, and we're all going to agree, and we're going to get more for our product, that's illegal. But when the labor class does it, they all unionize and form together and say, we're not going to sell our labor for less than this price or that price. That's not illegal, but it's the same thing. But the real way to increase your wage is not to try and strong arm the capitalists through unionizing or to overthrow the capitalists through socialist revolution, but to increase your knowledge and increase your skills so that you contribute a greater amount of talent or time to the marketplace. So you have to understand that as a laborer, you are selling a product, and that product is you. That product is your time and your talent and your labor. And your employer is actually your consumer. An employer is the consumer of labor. They're the ones paying for labor. And labor is your product, and your boss is your consumer. So you have to think, if you want more for your labor, how do you get more for your labor? You need to have more skill in your labor, or really specialty. You see, the reason that general labor is so cheap is because anyone can do it. That's why it's minimum wage is really what you're supposed to get when you're getting your first job. You shouldn't be getting minimum wage when you're 30, 40, or 50, because you've had time at that point to acquire knowledge and skills and to become a specialist in something. So that's the reason general labor is so cheap, because anyone can do it. It doesn't require any special training, doesn't require special education, doesn't require a lot of talent. Anyone can sweep a floor or whatever the general labor job is. Wash the dishes in the back. That was also one of my jobs in the past. I was a dishwasher, is one of my first jobs. Anyone can load a dishwasher and turn it on. Anyone can wash some pots and pans. And since anyone can do it, the competition is high. So that's supply and demand. That's what ultimately determines the price of any commodity, and labor is a commodity. It's supply and demand. And since there's a lot of competition in general labor, the price is low. So if you want to have a higher pay for your labor, then you need to have more specialized labor. That's when you get into the specialty fields, the people that, are, say, doctors or lawyers, or, there's still competition in those fields, but there's a bar to entry because of the education that's required, and they're more specialized. And then even within those fields, a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, they can demand a lot higher pay because they have a lot less competition, because they're in a much more specialized field. So rather than this young generation is, all upset about, the capitalists and exploiting the labor, and we want more money. So what they want is they want higher pay for lesser skills. They want higher pay for lesser talent. They want higher pay for the same amount of work. And that's really the injustice. I think then you're really robbing the consumer of labor, which is the businesses and the business of the capitalists. You're robbing the consumer of labor of the benefit of free market value, and when they unionize, you're robbing the consumer of labor from the benefit of free market competition. And so rather than this generation being all angry at the capitalist and trying to redistribute the wealth and demanding an increase in minimum wage, the mindset that you ought to have is that you have to learn before you can earn. You have to continue to develop your talents and your skills so that you can pull more out of the marketplace because you pour more into it. Ultimately, it's a biblical principle. You reap what you sow. If you want to have a bigger harvest, then you need to plant a bigger field. So if you want to pull more out of the marketplace, you need to contribute more to the marketplace. And so the whole mindset of the socialist is all wrong. So you have this debate today, should we raise the minimum wage? Well, first of all, employment is a private contract between the employer and the employee. The government should have no role whatsoever in the economy. Unless you're talking about people robbing banks or stealing from one another, ripping each other off, then you have penalties, you have laws because you're violating human rights. But as far as regulating wage or salaries, that's insane. It's not the government's job to regulate the price of any good. It's not the government's job to determine the salary of anyone. The prices should be determined by supply and demand. That's how prices are naturally determined. Look at the stock market. It happens in a very volatile rate, but that's supply and demand. It's basically like a live auction. And when you see that ticker on the stock market, that's like an auctioneer auctioning off a price to see if there's any buyers. And that's how price is naturally determined also when you sell a house. You list it, and if there's no buyers, then you lower the price. Or if there's lots of buyers, then the price gets into a bidding war and it raises the price. And the same should go for labor. If you are applying for a job and there's not many applicants who have your talents and skills to accomplish that job, you can demand a higher pay. And that's why CEOs get paid so much money, because not everyone can do the job of a CEO. So you have guys today like Bernie Sanders who are running campaigns saying CEOs get paid too much money. I was talking to a fella who said, yeah, CEOs get paid too much money. We have a distribution problem in our society. And that's just, rather than being mad at the way the system is, when the system is actually just, when prices are determined by supply and demand and prices are determined by the free marketplace, that's just. But when you have bureaucrats and politicians and government officials who want to dictate prices of labor or salaries or how much a CEO should get paid, they want to cap their income or tax them unfairly above and beyond everyone else just because they're high income. That is the true injustice. So socialism is based on a warped thinking of what justice really would look like. That somehow the capitalist is unjust, the capitalist is exploiting labor, that the labor class is a victim class. And what I said to the guy who said, CEOs get paid too much money, I said, well, first of all, it's none of your business what someone else gets paid. Okay, that's up to the board who hired him. That's up to the company that determines, what his salary should be. He has his own competition that he's dealing with, competing and applying for a CEO position. Not many people can fill it. They demand a higher price. They contribute a lot more to the marketplace if you consider everything they're overseeing and facilitating and initiating, and a lot more responsibility. But either way, it's none of your business what someone else gets paid. You need to focus on your own. The only thing you're entitled to is what you negotiate for. The only thing you're entitled to is the wage or salary that you agree to work for, and no more and no less. So there's no injustice. If I have a job, to fix my roof, and I get 3 bids from 3 different roofers, and I go with the lowest bid, I'm not exploiting that roofing company because I'm paying them the lowest bid. That's just free market competition, free market value, and that's the amount of money they agreed to work for. So there's no injustice in working for the amount that you agree to work for. The injustice is asking the government to interfere in the free economy and to force the consumer of any good to pay a higher price just because you want to get paid more. And you're not contributing any more value, you just want to get paid more. So here's the problem. If you raise the minimum wage, so there shouldn't even be a minimum wage. Your wage is whatever you agree to work for. And so the government shouldn't even have a role in that. But here's the problem with minimum wage is that when you force companies to pay a higher minimum wage, then you are increasing the cost of production. And when you increase the cost of production, you ultimately increase the cost of goods. And if you increase the cost of goods, then you're increasing the cost of living. And when you increase the cost of living, that's called inflation, then they're going to demand another raise in minimum wage. And it's a vicious, endless cycle ad infinitum where you ask for a higher minimum or you impose a higher minimum wage and ultimately increase the cost of living. So you have to then again demand a higher minimum wage, which again increases the cost of living. And all the meanwhile, inflation is robbing the savings and retirements of everyone who's working, which is the working class that's supposedly being unjustly exploited. And now you're inflating their retirement and savings, so it's not worth as much because you keep increasing the cost of living in this country by demanding a higher minimum wage. Because when the minimum wage is increased, the whole economy has to adjust. Because now the guy who has put forth a lot of effort into developing his time and talent and knowledge and skills and specialties, and he gets paid, 3 times the minimum wage or 5 times the minimum wage. When you raise the minimum wage and increase the cost of living, he's going to want to raise too. Because that's what happens when you increase the cost of living. Everybody's going to want a wage increase or a salary increase. So what we really should have is a free market where the government stays out of it. Let the people negotiate their own salaries and their own wages. Let the laborer who wants to get paid more focus on his own self-development and contribute more to the marketplace to bring greater value to the marketplace so that he can pull out higher wages or greater profits from the marketplace. And then have a limited government with limited taxation, limiting the government just to their fundamental essentials, which is protecting our rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to enforce the law, to uphold the law, to secure the border, to protect us from threats, domestic and abroad, strong military, strong police, strong court system. That's what the government should be focusing on, not the price of gasoline or the wages of the labor class or the salaries of CEOs. None of that is the government's job or the government's business. So the socialist propaganda is this injustice that doesn't exist, that the capitalist is evil and exploiting people, that the labor class is a victim class that's being abused and mistreated. None of that is true. None of that is true. Price is naturally determined by supply and demand. You are only entitled to the wage you agree to work for, and you get what you negotiate for. All of that is perfectly fair and just, and the way it ought to be. So I rebuke and reject this call from this generation to embrace socialism or communism. We need free market capitalism with limited government and limited taxes. And that is the reason America has prospered as a nation, in contrast to, say, communist Russia or communist China. The reason that America has had more innovation, we invented the automobile, we invented the airplane, we invented the microwave, we invented cell phones. It's the free market capitalism driven by a profit margin that created this innovation and creativity and has ultimately blessed the entire world. And that's how America needs to continue to be conducive to a free market society. So just wanted to share a few thoughts. I could go on and on about these things, but I think I've said enough. God bless you. Well, one more thing I wanted to add, it's that the blessing of a free market capitalist society is that you can work your way up from nothing, where all you have is your time and talent. If that's the only capital you have, then you're in the labor class and you're selling your labor. That's the only product that you are selling. You can work your way up by living frugal, by saving, until you yourself now have a capital that you can invest, and you can own the means of production to create wealth and bring it to the marketplace. And then you go from being a wage earner to a profit maker. And the problem in the mind of a socialist and communist is that they just want to confiscate profits, when the right way to do it is to make profits. Or they want to just seize the means of production, where the proper way to do it is to work your way up until you rightfully own the means of production. And so, socialist revolution and communism, it's an unjust way of seizing profits and seizing the means of production, when in a free capitalist society they could work their way up from the labor class to the capitalist level or the investor level. And that's one of the blessings of the free market society. So don't get mad at the system. Don't get mad at the game. Learn how to play it and work your way up without doing anyone wrong, without seizing the profits of the capitalist. The capitalist is entitled to his profits because he's the one taking the risk. When he hires the laborer to do labor, you have a guaranteed wage. He's hiring you. You know your hours. You know your hourly wage. He's going to pay you, and so you have a guaranteed wage. But when you're a capitalist or an investor, your profits are not so guaranteed. Prices change, profit margins shrink, and the reason the capitalist is entitled to his profits is because he's the one taking the risk, and of course, as the owner of the means of production, he has the right to reap the fruits thereof. So. That's the last main thing, is that the socialist wants to confiscate wealth rather than make wealth. They want to seize the means of production rather than rightfully own the means of production. When in a free market capitalist society, you can work your way up from nothing and selling nothing more than your labor and your time and talent until you are a saver, and then you become an investor, and before you know it, you're the capitalist that all the socialists are jealous of. So there you go.